Hello and hey, and today I'm going to join you from the very beautiful Legalized Sunlight Bulbs Club World in Trove. This should be my very last Trove video, as I explained to you sort of the disintegration of my interest over the last two major updates of this game. My interest definitely should have waned before then, but I really enjoyed the core gameplay loop, as simple as it was. But before we get into all that, I want to go ahead and give you a brief history of history of the game. So I started playing last January, early January. Few of my friends. I feel like this started as some sort of a meme that we're going to all play this children's MMO, but then several weeks later and we're all still hooked to the game and still enjoying each other's company, and that was the main draw, right? That's how you're going to get really locked into a game. You have a group of people that you play with and always play with, and it is the conversations and those sort of things that really hook you into something that can make a game like Trove a great experience as a whole. And even after the honeymoon period kind of wears off, and we realize all of its flaws, like all the latency issues that were definitely plaguing it to a greater extent towards the beginning, but especially the time gating issue of obtaining power rank to get to the higher Ubers or world tiered worlds, if you're unfamiliar with the game. That was the main gripe. That the way that you could bypass that was paying an exorbitant amount of money for what you get in content in real life, real world money, to kind of bypass that. And that's obviously not going to be the case. This is a free to play game. We just played it casually. If you sunk enough time in, you could make progress over people that were playing about the same amount of time, but you were still limited by the number of weeks. So if you played every single day, you would benefit more than someone who just played once a week. And over time, that does build up to be a huge lead, but it really entails and involves an investment that is much greater than that of just paying a set amount of actual money to just completely bypass all of that, or to get super lucky on the RNG of an empowered gem box, which is like the loot chest, whatever you want to say, sort of box that happens every week that you would get by reaching a certain power rank. So it was kind of tied into itself. The main issues that I've had with the game are the last two major updates, which I spoke on. I believe I spoke on earlier. That the first of which, the Geode update, was completely irrelevant basically to the game, and it just sort of elongated the amount of time between what felt like actual content, and that's one thing by itself. But continuing to play through that, I get stronger and stronger for the next update, which was meant to add on to the end game of U10. So U9 was the cap before this update, U10 was afterwards. It's limited to a singular biome or singular world type, so it's not just an added difficulty to everything. It is a very specific situation where they have added an entirely new stat that currently and probably for the foreseeable future will only work in that set of biomes. And that is just absolutely silly to me. Like, I've grinded up all this stuff for all this time, and now the only draw of playing the game is to build up a stat that helps me get more gear or higher gems to help me build up the stat that has no other function. There's also a subset of that, which isn't the right word, but also a side benefit to gaining more damage and more crit damage, but none of the content in any other part of the game required that extra damage whatsoever, and it's hardly a benefit. It is a percentage that is almost irrelevant. If you just have one other person that you can play with, the damage difference is just super negligible. You might save 6 seconds on a boss that takes a couple minutes. Like, it's just not something that's appreciable in a way that makes you feel great about getting it or trying to obtain it. So as you can see from my power rank in the upper left, I really did not invest any time into the latest update. I'm only 30,000. Over 34,000 is possible now, whereas I was at like 26,000 before the update, and 26.5 roughly was about where it was. So I was pretty near the max, and I just could not care less because it's all sort of superficial, and there was nothing that I felt like I was actually working towards. And of course, in games like this, your interest is always going to decline at some point, and it's up to the game itself to kind of bring you back in. It just didn't for me. There's tons of people that are still playing it, and that's completely fine. But the way that it really rubbed me, that I just didn't like, was how streamlined the entire process is. You are completely jammed up now with the change to gem boxes now being able to drop shadow gems, radiant gems at much, much earlier Ubers that it is so quick to get to 5K, to get your class gem key, to get into U8 of the new biome, to do all these things that used to take you weeks and weeks, which in accessibility, the problem was the time gating. It wasn't that it was too hard. You didn't have any agency, or there wasn't no measurable progress that you could make. Up until that point, you were just hoping for an empowered gem. Picking the actual ability of such was never going to be on the menu for you. You just had to take what you were going to get and hope that the gem rolled well with the squares. You were relying so much on RNG that it was time gated that I just feel like you getting kind of shoved through that entire process is equally bad. Like, it wasn't an improvement, and it feels like now that the new company has taken over, it's only going to support the same sort of unfortunate business model that they have a reputation for. And with a much smaller development team that's involved with this game now, I believe that even if a Shadow Tower update did occur, it would not justify the addition of the new stat. But the things, or something at least that I would like to also address with the first part of the Geode update, was because, as you're seeing on your screen right now, it became this weird cave spelunking thing where I'm like super high level with all my gear, so I can like kind of zip through it. But even this is very, very slow pace compared to the main game. You see me kind of trudging along here, and the mini game becomes either feeding, healing, or helping keep warm these small creatures in this cave. And it's just something that is so far off base. They're just like, it's a children's MMO, so let's add some like Neopets stuff to it. It just seems so strange, so weird. They went every different direction, and just the combination of all that just really turned me off. Like, I had played for months without any of my friend group continuing playing because I felt like I was building myself up. There might be this new tier of play that we might get to see. Then the transaction happened, the hostile takeover, I believe it was, of Tryon Worlds, and then here we are now with a completely just different experience on the other side of it, where it's super accessible, but it streamlines you. It's super accessible, but it streamlines you into absolutely nothing at the end, and it's something that I just don't care to play anymore. And maybe that's just a personal bias where I just don't care about the game, and that's a natural progression. But I feel like the acceleration and the disintegration of like just anything that resembled progression and meaningful progression was what exactly turned me off. And that's why I just don't care. So just want to make this video for myself mostly. Like I said, I don't think anybody at all that watches my channel plays this game, but I wanted this for myself. So if you did make it here, as always, thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and be safe, guys.